Welcome to Performance Car Lounge, where each week we speak with enthusiasts selling their beloved performance cars. This week, we speak with the seller of a Mazda RX-7 SP Series 6. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Performance Car Lounge podcast. This week, we are speaking with Barry, who is the seller of a really fascinating RX-7 SP. Welcome to the podcast, Barry.
Thank you, Stuart.
So, Barry, I thought we'd start by talking about the fascinating history that led to the development of the RX-7 SP. So, Mazda were competing in the Australian GT production championship, predominantly in enduro racing, for years leading up to the development of the SP. And from 1992 to 1994, Mazda were having significant success with the RX-7, where they won the Bathurst 12-hour in those years.
That's right, Stuart. I believe actually the first year, 1992, that's when the FD RX-7 first came to Australia. And they had basically taken a model practically off the boat and almost direct to the racetrack. They raced it, still had all the factory radio, air conditioning, I think, so lots of the factory road-going gear, and they still managed to win that 12-hour endurance with that first RX-7.
Yeah, I actually looked into that, and that was one of the things that really impressed me. That was a true win on Sunday, sell on Monday type of car, where they took the car to the racetrack. It still had the leather seats. It still had the Bose sound system. It still had the electric windows. It still had the air conditioning. It had everything. It was just basically a road car that they took directly to the track, and the race team was run by Alan Horsley. And the other thing that I really liked to hear is that the pit crew were actually made up of apprentices out of Mazda dealerships from around Australia. So these apprentices were used to probably working on Mazda 121 fun tops during the week, and then at the race weekends would go and work and pit on these RX-7 race cars.
Yeah, which goes to prove that the RX-7 in general is just such an accessible race car to the public. You don't need to have a race team to have a race car or some specialty vehicle. The RX-7 itself is a race car that you can have on the road.
Yeah, and what was particularly impressive to me is the RX-7 was beating cars such as the Honda NSX, which was driven by Wayne Gardner. It was beating factory-backed Porsche 968s during those Bathurst 12 hours, and a whole host of, like a Lotus that hadn't even sold a Lotus in Australia at that time, but they brought it out to race. And Mazda were keen to demonstrate to the public that their car could beat the best in the world and in these long form races.
And then they did that 3 years running with the FD RX-7 before the SP came along. 3 years in a row is pretty impressive.
Yeah, so from my research, I think Porsche and BMW got fairly sick of Mazda winning all of these races, and Porsche brought out the 911 RS Club Spec or Club Sport to really take the crown from Mazda, and BMW brought out was it a BMW, I think? M3R, yeah, that's right. Again, in an effort to really take it to Mazda and take that crown away. And that's what led to the development of the RX-7 SP.
Correct. And I believe something like the 911 RSCS potentially even has things such as thinner window glass, getting rid of some of the electrics, being a real sort of weight-stripped race spec. Whereas the RX-7 certainly at that point was still very much a standard road car. And so with the SP, they decided that they needed to do something to the RX-7 to give it a fair chance of beating these new hot models that were coming out. And that then drove a lot of the mechanical changes and bodywork and various other changes to the RX-7 to build the SP.
And I believe there was about 127 changes made to the car over the standard RX-7 to make it the SP. And also, I believe SP Does that stand for special project?
I couldn't tell you to be certain. Special project, special performance. There are a lot of things about the SP that are a little bit lost in the mists of time.
Yes.
Even specific numbers about how many were built, and between different build numbers, there's maybe some subtle changes in what they actually have on them as well.
Yeah.
Some have Recaro seats, some don't. The original SPs had the rear windscreen wiper removed. The later SPs didn't. So there's a lot of variation amongst the SPs.
I think there was about 40 of them made, and I don't think Mazda are too clear on how many were actually produced. So in this style of racing, it was a homologation like style of racing where they had to produce a certain number. I think they only had to produce 10. Is that your understanding in order to be eligible?
Yes. So again, one of these numbers is debated and argued around in circles. It may be 10 that was required for homologation. I had also heard 25, but I couldn't tell you the exact number. For a long time, people were of the view that there were 25 SPs made, and then that was before the actual 12-hour endurance race, which that year moved from Bathurst to Eastern Creek. Then people claimed there were another 10 that were made subsequent to that. But over the years, with more and more research and more information coming out, those numbers have been refined a little bit. I believe the ones that were made post-race were made to custom orders, not just a stock for on showroom floor, but they were built to order. And there are around about 12 or so of those, from what I understand. The numbers from prior to the race, 25, 26, maybe then plus some race cars, plus some journalist mules, but all up around about 42 cars. We think is the total number that's ever been built.
Yeah, I believe there was about 3 media cars built, one of which was stolen and burnt out at some stage. So then, to set the scene for that Eastern Creek 12-hour, Porsche was so confident in winning that race that I believe they flew out all the big wigs from Porsche in Stuttgart and head office to the race, and they had a superpower driving lineup with Jim Richards and Peter Fitzgerald. So they were very confident in winning, I believe, and it was the famous liveried Triple M car that was driven by John Bowe and Dick Johnson that actually took out the race.
That's right. There were 2 Triple M branded cars, one in white, one in black. And the one in black, I believe, had a bit of a bingle in practice or something prior to the race, but it did still run. The one in currently may have finished 4th or something, don't quote me on that. The one in white, yes, so that's the one that now gets all the media attention in photos, and that went on to win the race.
I believe that the black car that had a fairly sizable crash didn't feel quite right during the race. But the other remarkable thing about that race was apparently the RX-7 got through the whole race on one set of brake pads that all they did was inspect them. They didn't even change them.
Yeah, so that's very impressive. Yeah.
They
might have used some sneaky tactics in the race. They were apparently chilling the fuel to be able to squeeze a bit more fuel in. Being an endurance race, obviously fewer pit stops counts. And some of the changes they did make to the SP, designing for endurance racing, the fuel tank is 110 litres, which is a very large fuel tank. And it, among many other things, carbon fibre. There's a lot of carbon fibre pieces on this vehicle to essentially reduce weight. They made a lot of the changes to reduce the underbonnet temperatures to make it a bit more reliable for the endurance racing, improve the airflow through the vehicle, bigger rims, wider tyres. But yeah, they're all the core mechanical things. Some of the tactics like the cool fuel were perhaps a bit innovative and maybe a bit controversial.
Yeah, well, I think that's all fair in racing, and also that Wankel 13B engine isn't known for being a frugal engine, so I think it's fair that they look at the rule book and find a way to get a bit of an edge there.
Yeah, that could be a bit of a furphy. Certainly, when I bought the car, I did buy it secondhand. I didn't buy it new. It had about 35,000 kilometres on the clock. Within a month or two after buying it, I drove it from Melbourne to Darwin and back. And during that time, I was averaging, well, speed-wise, certainly in the Northern Territory at that time, had no speed limit between towns, so open speed limits. And yes, I did quite happily cruise on some fairly high speeds. And I averaged over that trip 11.1 litres per 100 kilometres, which isn't bad at all.
That's quite reasonable.
Yeah, since then, I have turned the boost up on the vehicle a little bit, at least I used to. And so I was getting more around 14, 15 litres per 100 kilometres. But that's not unreasonable given the type of performance vehicle that it is. You look at a Nissan Skyline or GTR or something along those lines, and a Supra, they're all fairly thirsty vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to produce power and you want to go fast, you're going to use a lot of fuel. That's just the way it is. Can you disclose what sort of, it was legal back then, what sort of speeds you got up to in the RX-7?
I do have a photo of my speedo in the Northern Territory at the time where it was legal of about 220 kilometres an hour. The car, in theory, would top out at about 260, I think. I didn't want to push it too much while I was there in the middle of nowhere, because if I did break down, I would be hard-pressed to find a good roadroom mechanic out in the middle of nowhere. So I was trying to be a little bit conservative. And
if you did come a cropper, it could be a long time before anybody saw you and was able to help you. So yeah, I think discretion is the better part of valor there.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's talk about, we won't go through all 127 changes that made the SP, but it was basically Australian developed by the Australian team. So it received a revised nose cone, like you said, made out of carbon fibre, and that was a Mazda speed part from Japan, but was modified locally with some more vents for cooling. And it had that carbon fibre rear wing, lots of carbon fibre in this car. Like you said, the fuel tank was carbon fibre. The Recaro seats were carbon fibre. It got the bigger brakes. I think they were Brembo brakes from memory.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yep.
It's got the 3-inch exhaust with a 4-inch tip. It's the 17-inch rims with the wider tyres on it.
Mm-hmm.
A BBS item, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. But with a custom Mazda Motorsport centre cap with a nice little kangaroo logo. There's lots of little Australian motifs all over the vehicle. We have just in the front corners of the side windows, there's a little kangaroo motif on the plastic there. You've got kangaroo motifs on the centre caps and the wheel rims. There's a Mazda Motorsport badging on the front strut brace. There's obviously an NSP sticker on the back. Lots of little bits of Australian throughout the vehicle.
Yeah, it's very cool and very unique, and obviously a very rare car on the international stage. And a Performance Car Lounge podcast wouldn't be complete without real nerd fact in there that'll make you the highlight of any dinner party that you attend. But on those wheel rim centre caps, they've got the kangaroo with the wreath around it, and if you want to delight all your friends with your knowledge, that wreath is known as a winner's garland. So keep that little.
I didn't know that actually, but thank you.
Keep that nugget of information up your sleeve for when you're at your next dinner party and you want to, blow everyone away with your interesting facts. Yeah. So the car also came with some bigger turbos over stock. It had the carbon fibre airbox as well.
That's right. So the nose cone, that was designed to then flow through a bit of a ram air system, essentially. So some ducting from the nose cone through to the airbox, carbon fibre airbox. There's even things like the battery tray that the battery sits on. It's carbon fibre. So there's lots of little touches that you might not even think of, but there's an awful lot of carbon fibre through it. The bonnet, however, is surprisingly not carbon fibre. That is aluminium, but with pressed vents and so on through it.
Yes.
But so that's one piece that is still metal, and that's I would imagine in the event of a bingle in a car race or something, the aluminium bonnet has some benefits for repairs there.
That sounds logical. And it's amazing how much weight they were able to pull out of an already very light car. I believe they pulled 92 kilograms out of the car, bringing the homologation weight down to 1,218 kilos, which by today's standards is super light.
And that's one of the benefits of the RX-7s is the lightweight and also the nice 50-50 weight balance. It's a very well-balanced vehicle.
Just all of those modifications and the pretty exotic materials that are used make it just sounds super expensive to me. I can't believe that they invested so much money into such a limited run of cars. I mean, for them to recoup their investment, I can't imagine they did.
Yeah, I don't imagine they did either. It is interesting, though, that a lot of what was designed for the RX-7 SP, when Mazda globally saw the success of the SP in racing, it's commonly believed that a lot of what we did here in Australia through Mazda Motorsport formed the foundations or the basis of the work they did for the RX-7, the Spirit R, I think it was, over in Japan.
I believe it was the 4 victories they achieved in the 12-hour races over here that led them to name the car the Bathurst R in Japan, which was a domestic-only model.
That's right.
Which is a super impressive thing. And, you know, I think it speaks to Mazda's commitment that at the time, this car, the recommended retail on it was $101,610 back in 1995, which at that time pegged it as the most expensive Mazda sold anywhere in the world. So,
wow.
A very special car.
Yeah, indeed.
And can you tell us about your experience with the car? So I believe you purchased it secondhand in 2000?
That's correct. So I bought it from Penfold Mazda here in Melbourne. I wasn't actually in the market to buy at the time. I had a Series 5 RX-7 Turbo, which I quite enjoyed. I had seen a Series 6 on the car lot at Penfold Mazda, and I thought I might be a bit of a tyre kicker, maybe go take it for a joyride as a test drive. But I had a look at the Series 6, and as I walked around it, I saw parked behind it this SP. I'd only once seen an SP before in my life in the flesh, driving down the road, and it was a real head turner. I knew about them quite extensively, and so having seen one up for sale, which was certainly very rare to come across, I decided this opportunity is not going to come up again anytime soon, and so I, off the cuff, went and bought the vehicle. Perhaps not the wisest financial decision at the time, considering I was fairly young and new to my career. Yeah. Some people would say I should have invested in a house instead, but I think I've got a lot more enjoyment out of the car than I would have a house.
Well, you can sleep in a car, but you can't race a house.
That's very true, yeah. So I did buy the car, and for the most part, I'm not a person to buy a car and just lock it up in a garage and keep it as a collector's item that's pristine. For me, a car is there to be driven and enjoyed, and I certainly have. As I mentioned before, soon after buying it, I drove it to Darwin and back. My parents were living up in Katherine at the time, so it was basically an excuse to go up there. Enjoyed that fantastic drive. I have enjoyed a little bit of track work over the years, not anything hardcore or professional. I just once in a blue moon would take it to an open practice day and have some fun around the track. Yep. And of course, lots of spirited driving up in the hills, part of various car clubs and so on, going on club drives. And I've made the absolute most of that. But perhaps a little bit unusually for this type of car, this was for many, many years my only car. And so this was also my grocery getter. And so for people just in a grocery car park, shopping centre car park, to see an RX-7 SP pulling in and somebody loading a boot full of groceries is perhaps not what they would have expected.
You're a man after my own heart, Barry. I love to see these type of cars used, and I don't believe that you get the most return on your investment by parking these type of cars in a garage. I mean, I think, financial return is only one aspect of buying cars like this, or very special limited edition cars like this, but also just the enjoyment you get from using it as much as possible and taking it out on track and taking it on those spirited drives. I think that creates those memories that are priceless. Quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in it not for an investment. I'm in it for the enjoyment.
So with your car as well, you've put so many Ks on it. I think that at 235,000 kilometres, you say in your ad that you've put a brand new motor in the car.
Yeah, so currently it's about 262 or 5,000 kilometres, which I kind of picture it's almost assuredly the highest kilometre RX-7 SP in the country or in existence. It is on a second motor, so a brand new motor, not rebuilt, brand new at about 230-something thousand kilometres. And A lot of people view the RX-7s or rotaries as a fairly fragile motor, or easy to grenade. I haven't found that. Maybe it's the way that I have looked after the vehicle, and I have always had it very regularly and carefully serviced through rotary specialist mechanics, and I haven't really spared any expense on keeping it well maintained. And so, I got 230 kilometres out of that motor, which a lot of people would be surprised is possible from a rotary. And that's with occasional track days, lots of spirited driving, not just banging it around. I do kind of think it's a motor that actually enjoys being used rather than just puttering around under 3,000 RPM all the time. Letting it rev occasionally, I think, serves it well. And it certainly served me well.
So whoever buys this car is essentially getting not a rebuilt engine, as you say, but a motor that's brand new, that's only got 30,000 kilometres on it, so basically just been run in.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's certainly run in. I'm not driving the car as much as I used to anymore, so it is largely parked, and I just pull it out occasionally now for a little bit of a weekend spin. I haven't been to the track for a number of years now, so the new motor that is in it is pretty pristine.
All right, and for anybody who wants to see the photos of this car, I will have them on the performancecarlounge.com.au website. So you can have a look at all of the photos. It's in a beautiful Montego blue colour. And I'll also provide a link to the ad for the car. So if you are interested in finding out more about this car, you can click on the link, find the ad and reach out to Barry and contact him there. So Barry, what's your reason for selling this car?
Look, I'm sure some of the audience might roll their eyes at this, but I've gone electric.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, there is the ad, Barry's gone electric. Well, indeed I have. But I didn't go Toyota. I've gone a Kia EV. And I'm thoroughly enjoying that experience, but it certainly isn't the same as driving the RX-7, losing that visceral engine sound, the manual gearbox, the feel, the feedback you get through the steering wheel. It's a completely different experience, and the RX-7 and combustion engine cars in general, particularly manuals, will always have a place in my heart because they're fantastic fun to drive.
Yeah, definitely. Which Kia EV did you go for?
I have been fortunate enough to go the Kia EV6 GT.
Oh, nice. I test drove one of those. I also have an EV, and I'm also the school of thought that you don't have to like one or the other. You can like them both, petrol cars versus electric cars. They're good in different ways. I actually have an Ioniq 5N, which I use as my daily driver, and I actually really enjoy it. It's very fast, as all EVs are, but I'm get plenty of feedback from the car. It's got good steering. It's fun in the corners. It's really enjoyable. And with the Ioniq, it does have that option of turning on the fake gears and the fake sound, which sounds really naff when I say it out loud, but it is quite engaging and immersive in real life. But yeah, I will always, love petrol cars. I have a Porsche GT3 RS that I take out to the track as well. And it's really a horses for courses thing. There's just so much emotion that comes from driving a petrol car. I'll always love them as well.
Right. For me personally, a lot of my hobbies that I've developed over the years require a fair bit of equipment, scuba diving, for example, lots of gear there. It is challenging to fit a lot of scuba gear into the RX-7. Although you would be amazed at how much I can through a bit of a Tetris game, but I can fit an incredible amount in there. But so my more practical needs required a vehicle that was larger, but I still wanted that at least straight line performance, and hence the electric vehicle suited my needs well.
Yeah, and how do you go about charging your Kia? Do you have a charger at home, or are you just using fast chargers about the place?
For the first few months of owning it, I didn't really have the ability to charge at home and relied on fast chargers, which was possible but not ideal. However, now I do have at-home charging, and I've put solar on as well. So essentially, I can charge my EV effectively for free from sunlight, excess solar generation during the day.
Yeah, I have noticed these days when I go to the servo to fill up any of my petrol cars, it highlights how expensive petrol is compared to even using a fast charger at commercial site. And, I actually think for my style of driving, I'm not in a position to at the moment, but I could just use a granny charger at home overnight, and that would see me through 95% of the time, I reckon.
Yeah, as long as you have the ability to charge at home, even if it is just a granny charger, a trickle charger, then yes, EVs are a fantastic approach. You then almost never need to charge out on the run, out on the go. They're really good. If you can't charge at home, it does incur some challenges, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the RX-7 SP. So we have here what is a very rare car, steeped in motorsport, heritage and history, a real feature of Australian motorsport history. How much are you asking for the car, Barry?
I've listed the car at 132,000. Now, I did comment earlier that this is probably the highest mileage SP in existence. It's probably also the lowest priced or most competitively priced SP in existence. I did see another Montego Blue RX-7 SP that was listed for sale as well, and it's asking somewhere in the vicinity of $180,000. So mine is well below that. That is noting, obviously, that it's not an original motor, and there is a degree of just wear and tear on the vehicle in terms of minor scuffs and so on. But overall, it's been priced in my mind as an absolute bargain, especially if somebody is of a mind to maybe do a little bit of work to fix up some of the minor wear issues that are there and turn it into a bit more pristine condition. There's the opportunity, if somebody had the resources and the temperament to do so, to a bit of very minor restoration and potentially turn a profit, or just hold on to something as an investment that will continue to appreciate year on year.
Yeah, I think the way that you've priced the car there's plenty of scope for somebody to invest in the car if they wish, for either resale or for their own enjoyment. The other thing I would say about the FD generation RX-7 is it's one of those cars that to me are just timeless. If it was released today as a new car, I wouldn't bat an eyelid and I would think it's a good looking car. It just doesn't seem to age.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is still an absolute head turner. Every time I drive down the street, I'm having people take photographs, approach me to talk about the car, pointing as I drive past, wanting to race at the lights, you name it. It gets a lot of attention.
And with that distinctive engine sound as well, that probably has heads turning before they see you. They probably hear you coming.
Yeah, rotaries do have an interesting sound. Yeah. And a lot of people really love that.
Okay, Barry. Well, thank you so much for your time. Wish you all the best with the sale. As I mentioned, if anybody is interested, head to the performancecarlounge.com.au website and we'll link you through to the ad and the photos of the car. And also worth noting that if you are watching this on YouTube, you can find the Performance Car Lounge podcasts wherever you find fine podcasts, or in this case, average podcasts. But that is an option for you too if you want to listen to the podcast on your commute to work, or if you're just having trouble sleeping at night. Barry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Stuart.
Wish you all the best for the sale. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks for joining us at Performance Car Lounge. If you have a performance car with an interesting story that you are selling, contact us at performancecarlounge.com.au.